This episode is brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/Cameron Adair and get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial. There's almost 1 million titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, or Kindle. I just got the new Chuck Klosterman book the other day, and it's really good.
This one is also brought to you by Amazon. Click on the Amazon link in the show notes or on the podcast page of the website and do your normal shopping through that link. We get a portion of what you would normally be spending on Amazon.
Really makes the difference, I think, is your credibility, is your list of credits, and your level of experience. A lot of luck is involved in that.
Well, what comes with the luck is just the persistence. That's Bay Area culture right there.
Totally, man.
It is. Like, that's the definition of it for so many people.
They're probably more interested in hearing funny stories about late night sessions than hearing the ballistics of a Studer 800. Youngsters thinking that this is all about, like, to satiate their own personal life moments rather than realizing that these are actual people out here who are working hard in order to produce a product. It's a real rough thing with the music business, is knowing when you've had enough. I certainly haven't, but I know other people who have, and it's a difficult decision to come to.
This is the Cameron Adair podcast with me, Cameron Adair, and this is episode 13. Today on the show is Matt Kelley. Matt is a recording and mix engineer. He's done a lot of work in the Bay Area over the years. He did Digital Underground, Tupac, Dead Kennedys, Jello Biafra, pretty much all the Hieroglyphics records, Souls of Mischief, Dell, The Coop, to name a few. We met up at his studio in Russian Hill in San Francisco. Here's Matt. What's on your mind these days? Work-wise, San Francisco-wise?
Not a whole lot. Just trying to do what I've always done, pretty much, which is to stay busy, stay working on projects that I truly am interested in, and hustle. And it's pretty much the way it's been for, since the onset of my career doing this.
Yeah.
I'd say that perhaps the situation in San Francisco has changed a lot. It's not as big of a music community as it used to be. That's for certain.
Yeah.
But there still is work out there. But it's harder and harder to find. I would tend to agree with the post-apocalyptic analogy as far as the club scene goes.
Yeah.
The live music scene here is just taking a total dump. It's
nosedive, yeah.
Total nosedive. It's borderline regrettably non-existent now. And if you compare it to the way it went, the scene back in the 80s or early 90s, it is non-existent.
Yeah.
So, I remember back in the 80s when I moved to San Francisco, I could go out any night of the week and see 4 or 5 live bands just on Haight Street. That's not even counting North Beach or any number of other neighborhoods here in town, So with that said, the live music scene, especially the live band scene is all but devastated, all but annihilated.
I know so many places have closed down.
Yeah.
Is that the main reason?
That's a big part of the reason. A lot of places, like 90% of the places have closed down for any number of reasons, whether it be things just weren't profitable. They got aced out because of rising rents. They got aced out because of whiny neighbors, or they kind of switched from doing live music to doing DJs and that sort of thing, which is a lot, hate to say it, but it's a lot more cost effective for clubs. When you just have a guy coming in with his laptop or whatever the case might be, as opposed to having to have infrastructure set up for live bands, a real PA, real mixer, real sound man, real monitors and microphones, on and on and on. It's just easier and cheaper to hire a DJ. What blows my mind is that people will accept that as entertainment. I can do that at home, man.
Yeah.
You know, I don't necessarily want to go to a club and hear somebody spin a lot of records.
I always think it's funny, like the DJ that, I mean, it's okay to do that. I've had DJs on the podcast, but you're not a musician.
Yeah, it's
Come
not
on.
the same kind of thing. It's hard for me to like get juiced watching a DJ. You know, it's easy for me to get juiced watching a band. So it's interesting to see which clubs are still around though. And some of them are like really fighting for their lives. The Elbow Room comes to mind. You
Yeah.
know, I thought the Elbow Room was going to be done, you know, by
Well, they
now.
were supposed to. I remember Matt was posting stuff on Facebook about it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I wasn't quite sure about the dynamics involved and why they were thinking about shutting down, but they're not. And I'm going to a show there Sunday night.
Nice.
So that's
You know who has really good audio is the Rickshaw Stop. I like the way the stuff sounds there. I don't know what they're doing or why, but they seem to have like the system is really good there. And unlikely too. You know, nothing fancy about it. But I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Not really, but it's been a while since I've been to the Rickshaw,
Yeah, me too.
you know.
Like going on a year probably.
Yeah, there are some bands that I know that play there pretty regularly, but I have yet to check them out at that particular venue.
What are you seeing at Elbow Room?
Mike and Nine. Now, he and I are homies from almost 20 years ago. So whenever
Yeah.
he's in town, I always try to make a point to see a show.
Cool.
I especially like the fact that I freak him out when I'm there. The Elbow Room is kind of a small club, and he sees me out there, and he always gets a little tense. Oh my God, my engineer is in the audience. And I'm just like, dude, we have done hundreds of sessions together, and you never freak out in the studio. What the hell is wrong with you, man?
He doesn't expect those vibes there.
Yeah, in the studio, it is a totally different kind of vibe, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's in front of a whole bunch of people. It's just, usually it's just me and him
Yeah.
doing vocals.
It's good to get out of town a lot too. You're going to, you said Georgia?
Yeah, I'm going to Athens, and I'll probably spend a little bit of time in Atlanta while I'm there.
I've never been to Georgia.
Yeah, Atlanta's a cool city.
It's a good music city.
Good music city. You don't want to drive there. You think Bay Area traffic is bad. Oh my God, Atlanta, Georgia is just hellish.
This morning I watched, I don't know if you've seen it, it's called Good Hair. It's a documentary about the weave industry in Atlanta. It's a Chris Rock documentary. They go around Atlanta to like weave trade shows and stuff. It's pretty bizarre.
No,
It's pretty cool, though.
I have not checked it out.
It's called Good Hair.
But it's interesting because, you know, back in the 90s, Atlanta, for Bay Area artists, especially African-American artists, rappers, people who were doing funk, R&B and stuff like that, Atlanta was a really hot destination because it was one of the few big major market cities where people could still afford to buy a home when San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, San Jose were all just getting, you know, out of hand disproportionately to the rest of the country, which is definitely the case now. I don't think you can get anything in San Francisco for less than $1.5 million. So, and that's a shack out in the sunset. So,
Yeah, but even just the rental situation is kind of bleak. I don't know if it's bad timing. I mean, but when I graduated from college, and people my age graduated from college, was basically the plummet of the Great Recession. So we've just been, you know, dealt a weird set of cards, I think.
well, there have been.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, there's definitely weird cards being dealt. I think that, you know, back in the 90s, it was the dot-com thing that pushed everything up. And while the dot-com bubble did ultimately burst, prices go up traditionally a lot faster than they go down. So that's when I first really started to notice the rental markets in San Francisco totally getting out of control. It was probably during the mid-90s.
The dot-com bomb.
Yeah, the dot-com bomb. All the prices went up, but when the bubble burst, the prices did not go down. They stayed kind of where they were at. And then with the tech boom the way it is right now, we're still seeing the prices escalate. Got a bunch of overpaid tech workers basically inflating all of our rental markets.
Well, something's lopsided from over here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's kind of strange. It's kind of weird, in fact, that a lot of my friends kind of feel trapped in San Francisco. You know, I've got rent control. A number of my other friends have rent control, and we're all in the same situation where it's just like, look, if we move, there's no way we're going to be able to afford to get back.
That's me.
So,
I just, you know, took the hit. It was maybe a little reckless, I think, moving out. but I did it. I wanted to.
Well, you were telling me too that your landlord was kind of a crumb. So
Yeah, it's Seagulls on Mission in 19th. So it's that big like zoot suit store. They sell zoot suits online, and it's like a throwback store. So the guy who owns that shop, they sell workwear and whatever. He owns the rest of the building on top too. And I mean, he'd rather be getting his money. There's a lot of really old people too. The guy straight underneath me, he was like a retired steel worker, and what do they call it when you get on a boat and you hide on a boat? Like you
kind of a stowaway.
Yeah, stowaway. I forget what they call it though. There's a name for it. But he did that from Ireland and then wound up in San Francisco as a steel worker. But he's in his 90s. And there was another like veteran guy, really old. They wanted those people out.
Yeah, I'm in
some youngsters in.
Yeah, definitely high-paid tech workers.
So
I'm in a different situation. I actually have a really cool landlord who wants to keep reliable tenants in her buildings. So
yeah,
she wants the same tenants that she's had for the last 20 years to stay. So because she knows them, she knows that we do our own maintenance around here, sans the plumbing, and she's been really cool with us. So
she doesn't have like the money signs flashing in her eyes.
Well, I think what's going on is that she inherited like 5 buildings up here on Russian Hill from her dad. And then she's also a dentist. So she works full time in a pretty lucrative profession. So I'm not sure making a shit ton of money is totally on her agenda.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
That's good. That's nice. Yeah, a lot of times it's, at least the people that I've talked to on this show or friends of mine, or apartment or whatever they've had has just been like handed down under the table through friends for however long. And people do kind of feel stuck because, if you budge, the game over sort of.
Yeah, kind
some
of.
people.
At least right now, not in the city.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to spread out to the East Bay, the South Bay. Everybody's kind of feeling the pinch right now.
So you came out from Wisconsin in the late 80s?
Yeah, 1986.
How long before you were, working at Hyde Street?
I started working at Hyde Street in 1988. And it's important that you kind of have some context about how Hyde Street works. Hyde Street is not just one studio or a set of studios called Hyde Street. Hyde Street is a building that has 3 large studios and any number of different production rooms that are rented out by different entities other than the leaseholder of Hyde Street. The leaseholder of Hyde Street, I think, is down to 1 room now, which he really manages, or they really manage. And even back in the 80s, it was the same. It was the same thing.
That's typical of the bigger studios.
Yeah, I would say so. But so when I started working in the Hyde Street building, there was Hyde Street Studios. There was Earwax Studios that continues to do a lot of commercial production, voiceover work, a lot of television and radio commercials, some film work, stuff like that. Then there was Alpha and Omega Studios, which was in Studio C at Hyde Street. And Alpha and Omega was run by a producer named Sandy Pearlman, who did all of the Blue Oyster Cult records, did a bunch of Clash records, any number of different people. And so he was running Studio C. And when I started at Hyde Street, I started in Studio A, which was a studio called Power Stroke Studios. And that was run by a woman from North Bay someplace, I forget, maybe Belvedere, Tiburon, had a bunch of money.
Nice area.
Really, yeah, nice area. Had a ton of money and was really into heavy metal and rock and roll. And that is where I met my mentor, I guess my main mentor. His name was
Mark Needham.
Yeah, Mark Needham, exactly. So Power Stroke lasted, year and a half before they kind of shut down. And I kind of transitioned into assisting over at Hyde Street and Alpha and Omega Studios after the Power Stroke studio thing. So Mark Needham was still working a lot at Hyde Street. And that's also, actually I met John Kuniberti while he was doing some work at Power Stroke too.
Yeah.
So
I say as far as like OG accomplished engineering world guys in the Bay Area, like Kuniberti comes to mind.
yeah, Kuniberti.
You.
Thanks.
Chris Dugan.
Chris Dugan, never worked with him, but some other names would be Jeffrey Norman, Gary Kryman. Let's see, there are a couple of others too, and they're going to be mad at me if I leave them off. Norm Kerner, they'll be mad at me if I leave them off the list.
Yeah, of course.
Dave Wellhausen, any number of people. There were definitely a lot more cats around.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's important to point out that this was before the onslaught of all of these recording schools like Expressions and Full Sail.
You talked about that a little bit on the Working Class Audio one.
Yeah. When I started, there was only one accredited program in the United States for audio engineering. And actually, it was more of a business. You get your degree in music business rather than audio engineering. Now, I think a lot of these schools are accredited.
Well, let me just back up. Matt did an interview that I actually hooked you up with Matt Boudreau on his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked a little bit about the recording schools and how the dynamic has changed for someone getting into the world of audio engineering.
Yeah,
but is it because the industry changed so much that people are like, we got to do something. Let's start making schools?
No, I don't think so. I think that it was, I'm certain that there is some of that involved, but I'm sure that there's a profit motive too. These are all for-profit schools.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jimmy Iovine's going to make headphones. Some other guy's going to open a school.
There you go. There you have it.
Because they got to get in somehow now that CDs stop selling.
Right. And, I think that, someone's going to make a set of really cool headphones. I know a lot of engineers are designing plugins.
Is there a market for that? I'm probably not as much as a school.
I think that you really need to be at the top of the game to be considered to make plugins, but people do it.
Because you see a lot of these little companies, they'll make something cool and then
attach an engineer or producer's name to it.
Or even artists will do that. It's in the last couple of years, it's been a lot harder to steal them. I mean, which means that it's a viable market, which means that it's a more of a viable market for someone in the industry who's trying to survive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think that a lot of these guys are writing their own codes for plugins. Like you said, I think there'll be a company that has something going on, and then Rick Rubin or somebody will attach their brand to it, and it will become a Rick Rubin plugin. Or
every sort of A-list mix engineer has
his own thing. Yeah. On the flip side, I do believe that Joe Meek, for instance, really does do a lot of his own coding, or at least is very involved in that process of making sure the coding actually comes across as something that he wants to put his name behind.
Yeah.
Rather than, somebody throwing an app at you and saying, okay, can you sign off on this for me? Yeah, can you slap your name on it for a couple G's and whatever the case might be, or more. So,
When I first came here, it didn't seem like the audio engineering school thing was as big as it is now. So many special young kids. And you mentioned the debt thing too, because those schools, unless your parents are paying for it, that's crazy.
It is, and these places are not cheap. I mean, you can to go to a really high-end recording school, Full Sail, you can accumulate almost as much debt as if you are going to medical school or law school or something along those lines. Maybe not quite as bad as medical school, because depending on what you end up doing as a specialty, the debt can be totally overwhelming. The difference being, though, that if you finally make it through medical school, chances are that you're going to have a pretty lucrative job.
Right.
Granted, listen, my youngest sister was in medical school for a long time. Once you're in, they don't want to let you go.
Yeah.
It's not like law school where you pretty much can go to any law school you want, go ahead and get your degree, but then you got to pass the bar, and that's the really hard part. Anybody can get into law school. Not the case with medical school. Not everybody can get in, and not everybody can stay. There's this constant, perpetual testing that goes on to make sure you're qualified to go to the next level. But once you graduate, once you actually are an MD, have MD after your name, chances are that you're in a position to be able to start paying off some of that debt. That is not necessarily the case if you want to be an audio engineer.
Right.
Not at all. The market is saturated. with people who have been to schools. And what really makes the difference, I think, is your credibility, is your list of credits and your level of experience, how long you've been doing it and who you've been doing it with.
Yeah, totally.
And that is, as I hate to say it, is a lot of luck is involved in that.
Yeah.
And getting to that point.
Well, what comes with the luck is just the persistence.
Absolutely. And you have to have
You
this.
got to keep trying or you're not going to find the luck.
Right, exactly. And then when you do find the luck, you have to be able to come up with the skills.
Yeah.
It's not just enough to have a lucky break. You have to really be able to utilize your lucky break, and you have to be ready for it.
And you were saying that that's what happened to you with
Digital Underground.
With Digital Underground, yeah.
Absolutely.
Fateful
It
sessions.
was fluky.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a classic music business, right place, right time kind of story.
Yeah.
Where, I had been assisting on some kind of what I would call local grown hip hop with another engineer. But when this particular phone call came in, it was last minute, as a lot of interesting gigs often are. They had been working Digital had been working at a studio called Starlight out in Richmond. And of course, this is the days before Digital, before Pro Tools, or if there were Pro Tools, 120 grand got you like 8 tracks. Oh my God. Some outrageous amount of money like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so everything was still all analog. Tape machine had blown up at Starlight, and they were under very, very significant deadlines to finish a couple of songs. And so they called Hyde Street last minute. They wanted to work in the middle of the night. Hip hop was definitely coming of age, but it was before it was as mainstream as it is now. So,
yeah, I mean, this is before The Chronic, is before, what else?
Yeah.
Ready to Die.
Yeah, right before all of that.
So
basically like a year or two.
pre-94, I think, is when everything sort of,
Yeah.
this is what hip-hop is.
So this was going to be, 90, 91, I think? So anyway, so these guys book an emergency session. Nobody's down to do it except for me. So I'll say, I'll go ahead and do it. Session is scheduled to start at midnight. They're late. I mean, like late. By 3 o'clock, I'm just like, look, if these guys don't show up soon, let's just bail, call it a night. And at like 2:59 and 45 seconds, they end up at the studio, and we end up recording and mixing Freaks of the Industry, which, was a good song. Shock G's a very talented guy, excellent piano player, great songwriter, good rapper. And then they come back the next couple of nights and are just super stoked. And, we end up doing a bunch of more songs. And then after that, it's just like, ooh, those were fun sessions. And then next thing I know, that record is platinum.
Yeah.
It's in the top 10. It's Grammy nominated. And it's
For Humpty Dance or is Do What You Like?
For Humpty
Which was
Dance, which was the first single.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's top 10, that's platinum, and the record just kind of shot off along with it.
That's Bay Area culture right there.
Totally, man.
It is. That's the definition of it for so many people.
So,
Yeah.
And then it just kind of like continued from there. So, yeah, fortunately, I had my synchronization skills down. I knew how to lock a tape machine up to an MPC 60. So again, one of these situations where I got a really lucky break, but I was able to kind of handle everything that they threw at me.
Was John Cunibert, he was managing at the same time you were there? Or?
John Cunibert was not a manager at Hyde Street when I was there. He
That was
predated.
before.
Yeah, he predated me
And he
at
was like
Hyde Street.
inventing the reamp.
He was a reamp. Yeah, inventing the reamp. He was working on when we met. When I started assisting for him, he was starting on Joe Satriani's second album.
Oh,
Flying
right,
in a
yeah.
Daydream.
Okay.
So I did a lot of assisting on that. When I started at Hyde Street, the manager was named Ricky Lee Lind. He was an engineer, and he was actually a pretty good manager for Hyde Street. But he ended up, as so many people do, getting married, having kids, and ended up taking a real job.
Yeah,
You know,
a real job.
a real job, like a 9 to 5, you know, kind of a corporate gig. That happens to a lot of people. You know, this is a very hard gig to do in any case. But if you have wife and child,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a brutally difficult gig.
A lot of musicians say that. If you're in the touring life too, I mean, why would you do that to somebody?
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
too, you can barely
take it yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's just like, I have sometimes a hard enough time
Yeah.
making all my bills, let alone like, especially kids, just like they are such expensive little things,
Yeah.
feeding them, clothing them, putting them in school, daycare, all of that, it's just like you need like $100K a year plus job in order to like fucking take care of a kid. It's just kind of the way it is, especially now.
Well, so Mark Needham did Chris Isaac, right?
Amongst a bunch of other people, yeah. He did Pharaoh Saunders. He did any number of great jazz records. Chris Isaac. Let's see, Lindsey Buckingham, Fleetwood Mac, The Killers. He's just got a huge discography.
I know everyone approaches it in their own way. Do you have a certain style, you think?
I have a certain pace that I like to work at, yeah. I mean, some people think that's style. It's like I do like to keep a certain clip. I don't like to go too quick, and I don't like to go too slow. Definitely, I think one of the most important things for me is keeping my artist involved in the process and the project. I don't like a situation where the artist is starting to feel left out because maybe I'm speeding too quickly along, which can happen, especially now on Pro Tools. It used to be on tape that you could only really get so quick at doing things just because of the
Rewind.
yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
The dynamics of just working on tape. While it's now, I mean, I know some cats on Pro Tools who, are just amazingly fast with this stuff. Which is great, especially if you're working alone, I think. But if you're working with the artist there, I sometimes feel like if I get going too quickly, that the artist can feel a little disconnected from their project because they're not quite sure what's going on with things. They're not quite sure what you're doing. And things are happening so quickly, they might feel like they're not getting enough time to adequately kind of interpret what's happening, or to adjust or digest to the changes that are happening in the song.
So that they're involved in more of a way, so it's not just passing the baton sort of thing.
Right. I mean, it's cool.
There's a lot of way records are made now.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to be there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, which is cool, but boy, I tell you, it saves some time one way, but it takes up time in the other. I'm working on a record with a guy in France right now. And we're doing mixing. It's one thing if you're just doing editing or mastering or something like that. But if you're doing mixing, it can be a little difficult because he's not right there to say, yes, I like the way this idea is going, or no, can we like try something else? So we end up doing Skype sessions, trying to like manage it the best way we can, and then just sending files back and forth to each other with ideas. It takes a while to do that, especially with somebody on the other side of the world, because you've got, he's 8 hours ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to get his notes until the next day. And it can be a little frustrating just because, again, he's not right there to say, oh, yeah, I like this idea. I like a flanger on this.
Yeah.
I like what you're trying to go for on this, or I like the filtering on this.
It's funny, too, because a lot of times stuff that ends up being your favorite is a lot of times just the easiest. So if there's a lot of back and forth, even if it was a thing where the artist maybe wasn't so much involved in the mixing or the editing or the programming, arranging.
It also kind of depends on what you're doing. Like most of my work is mixing. I'm a mixer mostly. I mean, I'm doing some mastering now, and I do recording too. But if I'm doing recording, I'm doing recording with a band there. I'm not really a programmer. I'm not really doing a lot of arranging and that sort of stuff. So if it were just all about composing beats and stuff like that, that's a little different because you can compose it and then just say yes or no, or do you got another one?
Yeah.
A lot of people will be like, well, let me hear something else. Let me hear something else. So with some luck, you'll have a whole library of stuff available for people to choose from, especially in the rap world where you got a rapper and they're going to want to hear a good 10, 15 different tracks that you have before they pick out one.
Yeah.
That's different than trying to do a mix for sure.
What about sonically, stylistically?
Sonically, stylistically, genre-wise, I am all over the map. I think that's very important for somebody who's really going to be concentrating on engineering and mixing and mastering to be extraordinarily well-versed in everything. You have to seriously be as adept at recording hip-hop as you are at recording an Irish jug band. You have to know your microphones. You have to know your instruments. You have to know your devices if you're going to be successful. The only way you're going to actually make a living doing this is to be able to handle pretty much anything that gets thrown at you. Rock and roll, punk rock, funk, anything. You'll find that there are some similarities between them all. But technically, especially with maybe the difference between doing a hip-hop session and doing a punk rock session, a lot of the difference is going to be in terms of the technology that you're using. But it's really important that you really have a very broad range of experiences. So let's say you are doing a hip-hop session and somebody wants to record some horns or some strings or something like that. You've done it before because you've done another genre of music where horns and strings are really a big part of what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, or the same thing, you're doing a rock and roll session and they want a break beat. You know, you have to be able to deal with that too. So, and I would say too that, you know, if you are getting started doing this, is you're always going to need to keep an open mind while you're doing this kind of work. But you may find that the music that you really enjoy listening to on your downtime isn't necessarily the music that you are best at recording, mixing, or producing. And that's just the way it is. You may love heavy metal, all right? But you may not be very good at recording it.
Yeah.
But your love of heavy metal may make you an excellent person for recording classical music. All right. The arrangements are similar. The math in the music is similar. All right. But the sonics and acoustically, it's way different. So that's just one kind of crazy example.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to get yourself pigeonholed.
Right.
Know? I mean, and regrettably, a lot of people are. You know, especially youngsters are not interested in doing anything except what it is they are down to do. And it's one thing if you're, exactly. Yeah. It's one thing if you're like this end of the microphone, if you're the artist.
Yeah.
All right. But it's another thing if you're on behind the glass and being producer or engineer.
Well, I mean, you could say that about artists too.
Yeah, you can, but it's going to be more difficult for, let's say, a rapper to embrace jazz or classical as a vehicle for doing what they want to do musically. You know, that it would be for an engineer to do the same thing. So
I've been listening to a lot of Chad Blake mixed records.
No, he's great, man. He's like one of my favorites.
Yeah,
in fact, he's getting to the point now where, I mean, I can like even say, "Oh wow, that's a Chad Blake record."
Sounds like
it sounds like a Chad Blake record. So no, he's amazing.
Yeah, I just started doing that Sansamp stuff.
Mm-hmm. He really put the hook in me with the Latin Playboys. That's when I really started to be like, "Wow, this guy's off the Richter scale."
I didn't listen to that one yet.
There are a couple of Latin Playboy records that you should check out.
Yeah.
It's lo-fi. It's just super cool. Yeah, simple but really full, you know, like real sonic landscape kind of thing. You know, but not overly complicated, not overly dense, not crazy number of elements in the song, the mixes. I was going to say one thing about me too is that I've always been more about, I've always enjoyed actually the process of making records more than actually having made records. You know what I mean? I like doing it. I don't usually go back and listen to my discography. Sometimes I do just for nostalgia and stuff like that. But I'm always trying to like be looking towards the next project rather than looking back at the last one.
Yeah, there's a Matt Kelley Spotify playlist you can look up.
There is. It's on my website, mattkelleyaudio.com, MATTKELLEY audio.com.
Yeah.
If you have Spotify, you can download it. But it's on my website. I try to keep it up to date, but I'm woefully behind, especially like on all the Hyro stuff. And I've done 12 albums with those guys, so there's a bunch of stuff I should have up there that I don't.
They have some serious core fans. I mean, a good friend of mine had a tattoo in high school in San Jose.
Man, they have all sorts of cats out there with tattoos. For a while, they were like doing a Facebook post of different cats with tattoos.
That wouldn't
hundreds
surprise me.
of them.
Yeah.
Qbert also has a lot of hardcore fans like that to his logo, the tattoos logo. So, but that Hyro logo is a famous tattoo. Also really interesting about the hieroglyphics is that they have multi-generational fans. They have children of some of their fans from the mid 90s, like 93 and stuff like that, are into Hyros.
Yeah.
Now. I mean, it's like that. It's kind of crazy. That logo of theirs with the three eyes and the ambivalent face is a magical logo. You know, I think Rolling Stones called it one of the top 25 most memorable and iconic music business logos of the last 100 years or whatever the case might be. And they do really well, especially if you're walking around San Francisco. Not a day goes by that you don't see somebody sporting some Hyro merch.
Yeah.
Whether it be a hat or a shirt or whatever. And they've done really well.
Yeah, if you don't know what that is,
shoes, yeah,
and you live around here and you don't know what that is, then you need to go have your head examined.
Only because it's so incredibly prevalent, man. Like
it's part of the culture here.
I have my Mercury Audio T-shirt on, but if you know me, you know that I have.
Always rocking the Hyro shirt.
I'm always rocking some Hyro shirt, and I have a shit ton of them. So there you go.
When I was working at Prairie Sun, Muko was talking about it a little bit, how things have changed or how they're changing. Not necessarily that things are worse, how it's different now. There's more cash. Seems like more people paying themselves rather than having, a label or somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. A lot more records are being self-funded. I mean, Kubert's last record that I did with him anyway, The Extraterrestrial, was all Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And let's see, even though Jello Biafra owns a record label, Alternative Tentacles, he pretty much pays for all of his records himself. He doesn't have the record label pay for it. The days of big label deals are pretty much over, at least in the Bay. I mean, you go down to Los Angeles or out to New York or, maybe Nashville, you're still going to find big label records. But even then, they're a lot more stingy than they used to be.
I think around 2012, at least on my radar, when there was like Krayshawn signed a big deal and Death Grips, and then both of those went down in flames. As far as major record label deals. And since then, I haven't really seen anything that's not independent. That's not someone doing it themselves.
Or on an independent label. Like, I'm sure Epitaph is still like sponsoring some records and stuff like that.
Yeah. But, I talked to Auntie, which is
that's part of Epitaph,
about my record.
And they are still pretty receptive to stuff. I mean, one of the interesting things about Auntie and Epitaph is that they really identify themselves as an independent kind of thing. I was talking to, his name is Andrew, one-time president of Epitaph and Auntie, and he was like, there's two record businesses down in Los Angeles. There's the independent people like us, and then there are the majors.
Yeah.
But they have two very separate kind of entities that happen down there. And it's always good to know that Auntie is still really seriously into listening to, new stuff that is kind of more cutting edge. Because most of the larger record companies now, they want somebody who is already established, who they know is just going to be basically a money machine for them. There is no A&R from big record labels for new artists. There isn't. They just want to pick up publishing deals, other people's old contracts, or people who are already totally established in the game. They don't want to take a chance on any new signs and any new artists, generally speaking.
Yeah.
The big four don't anyway. So,
which not that long ago used to be the big six.
Yep. And then there are the smaller, mom and pop indies. That will definitely help you out with tour support, might be able to help you out with a little bit of your recording budget, but you're still going to have to come out of pocket. What the mom and pop indies are really good for is helping you with distribution and helping you with publicity and stuff like that. Especially if you're like doing something besides total online distribution, which is actually getting to be more and more of the case, for better or for worse. One of the problems with that is that the work is really on the consumer to figure out what's good and what's not, with that. I mean, it's just basically a whole deluge of different stuff to sort out, figure out what you like, figure out what's not cool for you. For better or for worse, back in the day, the record labels did have a little bit of a function about being kind
gatekeepers, taste-wise.
Being kind of gatekeepers. Better or for worse, mind you, for sure. But at least there was a gatekeeper there. The floodgates weren't just totally open with absolutely everything being available on SoundCloud or whatever the case might be. So,
how do you differentiate yourself? Everyone's a unique snowflake,
Everybody is
a unique
snowflake. I mean, the way I try to handle it when I'm listening to new music, and this hasn't really changed for me at all, is that I rely on my friends.
Yeah.
To hit me to new stuff. And they rely on me. But 9 times out of 10, is it going to be something that somebody says, you need to check this out? And I check it out and I like it. It's not enough just to listen to it on Spotify or to just buy a couple of downloads from iTunes. I mean, for one thing, they sound like crap, generally speaking. And so, especially if it's a record that I really like, I'll always go out and buy the disc because it sounds 1,000 times better, you know? And then I'll digitize it myself if I want it on one of my devices.
I caved. I got Spotify the last couple of months.
Don't think of it like that, because you are in the business, okay? And Spotify does one thing for us who are doing this music business thing, especially if you're in production or engineering and stuff like that. It makes it very easy for you to access music when somebody is asking you, is suggesting that you check out a particular artist or band or genre or something for ideas for mixing. It can be really expensive to go out and buy every single CD that somebody wants you to listen to while you're mixing their project. If you're looking for ideas and stuff like that, Spotify is very helpful. Somebody will say, oh, can you check out this track from Eagles of Death Metal or something like that. Now, just turns out I have a bunch of Eagles of Death Metal CDs because I like the band.
Yeah.
All right. But if I didn't, Spotify makes it easy for me to like go in and check something out really fast. It's also a good way to decide whether a band is really worthy of the huge $10 you have to throw down for a disc.
Yeah.
Generally they are, but there have been a couple of times where I haven't been super crazy about them once I heard the CD, but also on the flip side, I'll listen to Spotify, and then if I see a record, let's say in the cutout bin or something like that, I'll just say, oh, here it is. I heard this on Spotify. I want to buy it. So Spotify for a music professional who's using it to reference music is not such a bad thing. It is bad for the music professional because you have to, what did I read on the internet lately? Like you have to have like a couple million spins or 200 million spins or something like that in order to make the same wage that a Spotify employee makes.
Go buy lunch, maybe.
And that needs to change. I think what's going on there is that the laws in this country, copyright laws and the dissemination of monies for different publishing royalties and stuff like that are just outdated completely. They're like super, super old. They're going back like 60, 70 years. So that whole thing needs to be revamped. There's no way we're going to get our Congress to do anything about it, but maybe in 4 or 5 years, once, there are cooler heads prevail in Washington, something can happen like that. So
part of it is just whoever owns the rights. I mean, you're voluntarily distributing it to these services. In fact, you're paying to have that done. I mean, you can fight it, you can find another way around it, but like I fought it for so long. I didn't want to deal with Spotify. I didn't want to be an artist on it. I didn't want to listen to music on it, but you just, I guess, got to go with the flow.
There aren't very many alternatives.
See what happens.
And again, it's like the technology has totally outpaced the laws, and like everybody's all into the new technology until it comes down to actually, so how do people get paid? Nobody figured it out.
Well, right. It's like the techno fever injected into us. That's really just bullshit.
And it's not just Spotify either. I mean, even like from the beginning, from the very, very onset of all of this, like the record labels were dropping the ball. When Time Warner bought Warner Brothers, I thought that's how they were going to save themselves, was basically come up with the first online music store, because they had the entire Warner Brother catalog and all of their subsidiaries, which are, dozens and dozens and dozens of different labels. And I really thought, okay, this is going to be the model. AOL is going to save themselves by basically figuring out how to distribute music online. And they did not.
Yeah.
They completely dropped the ball.
Yeah.
All the record labels dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And finally, it was Apple who came up with the first online music store.
Right.
So to see how blindly the corporate music business went into this without any clue about what they were getting into, to me, is just, to date, mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Huge opportunity lost.
Yeah. The size of the tech industries, though, as far as valuation, is exponentially bigger than even a corporate media company like Viacom or Sony ever was.
Hey, we're down to the four,
Four.
And they've got their hands into everything, not just music, but all television, all movies, every kind of entertainment you can think of.
As long as that's the norm, people are going to be making, cheaper records
People are going to be making records for less. They're going to be more pissed off. They're going to be more broke.
Yeah, and what will happen is that we'll continue to see this paradigm shift that has been in music and is ultimately going to make its way into film and DVDs soon.
It has. What do you see now in film? You see $100 million superhero reboots. No one cares about that. It's just a money machine. The days of the auteur are the same way as the musician.
Mm-hmm. Totally, but I was kind of taken in the direction of we're seeing this paradigm shift where music, all entertainment, shifts from being a commodity to being an experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of something that you buy, like a product, like a CD, like a physical something, music, a movie, whatever the case might be, is something that you experience. And people think that experience should be free. Oh, why shouldn't I have to pay for this experience? You know? When in fact, you're not paying for an experience. You're paying for somebody's hard work, for somebody's investment in technology and time investment. That's what really kind of makes me sick, is the fact that I'm just seeing more and more youngsters thinking that this is all about like to satiate their own personal life moments, rather than them realizing that these are actual people out here who are working hard in order to produce a product that is definitely meant for them to consume, but for them to consume at a fair price, like any other part of the free market system. It sucks, but it's true. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to change until people start getting serious about addressing some of the laws that are in place that define royalties and publishing and stuff like that. Because as I said, all of that is woefully out of date.
Amongst the hundreds and hundreds of artists that very few of them plan on making money doing this and think about it in that way. I mean, a lot of people are just, satiating their need to do their thing or whatever while they're young. That's just so annoying to me. So many little twerps running around.
That's true. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it's a giant shift from even just 20 years ago, where people were thinking, I might be able to make a living doing this.
Yeah, well,
it's never been easy. Let's put it like that.
It's never been easy, definitely.
And
it'll change too. A recession is the best time to start a business, because if you can survive that, then you're that much stronger when the getting is good.
Yeah, but it's getting to be the point now where the getting is never good, where it's a constant, perpetual recession.
Yeah.
I mean, like it has been since like the late 90s.
Yeah.
And certainly since about 2008, and when things really, really got bad, things have not gotten a shit ton better for people in our business, that's for certain. There's one thing about the early days of music business is that if you didn't get signed, then there wasn't a whole lot of point for you to continue unless you were going to do live, because you were never going to be able to afford to make a record in a real studio. So people would be like, okay, I guess this isn't going to work out for me. I guess I'll go on and do something else with my life. Where now, like you were saying, you got a ton of people out there who taste a little bit of something because 15 people download their song from iCloud and they think, oh man, I'm going to be large.
Yeah.
Kind of like crazy, but it's a real rough thing with the music business, is knowing when you've had enough. And I certainly haven't, but I know other people who have, and it's a difficult decision to come to, Yeah. As I said, most people are like kind of like out of it because they have kids or have families, or they, leave an area where you can really do this. That's still one thing, even though it's all crushed digital world out there, you still kind of need to be in a place where things are happening,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Those places are, generally tend to be larger metropolitan areas, New York, Los Angeles, Nashville, Atlanta, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, to name a few.
If you want to be involved in any sort of real world way, a lot of people say because of the internet, you could be an artist anywhere because you can just invent, your whole persona.
A couple of people can pull it off.
Yeah.
Sufjan Stevens lives somewhere in the middle of Idaho or Wyoming or someplace like that. And he seems to do okay doing his stuff independently. But that is definitely an exception to the rule. That is not the rule. So,
what's next?
What's next in terms of technology, in terms of music business, something like that? I ultimately think that I would like to see two things happen. First, I'd like to see the industry, especially regarding the computer industry and live streaming industry, finally settle on a format that will last more than a couple of years.
Yeah.
Something that is substantially better than MP3.
Yeah.
You know, I know that there are a lot of people playing around with different kinds of
Well,
formats
there's
here,
the
but
Tidal Hi-Fi.
yeah, there's that.
They offer the premium streaming service, which is 24-bit wave.
There's Pono, which are doing high definition, stuff like that. But it's going to require that big technology companies like Apple also settle on a format. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. Another thing I'd like to see is a method by which information about the album, credits, liner notes, artwork, stuff like that, is easier for the end consumer to access. You know, right now, that is pretty much, you can put some of that information on the metadata of the CD, but not all of it, because there are only specific fields that are established in metadata right now. I mean, you could probably get more of them going, but that information is attached to the CD. It's not attached to the audio file. And finding out some way to attach metadata to the actual file itself, I think would be really cool.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how you would do that. I've talked to different coders who I know, and it's something that people are interested in and working on, but it presents some problems, not just on a coding and technical level, but it also presents some problems in that there is no uniform format that is being used widely for dissemination, except for MP3.
Just for the sake of having credit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Credit, liner notes, information. I remember when I was a kid.
AllMusic seems to be pretty reliable. I don't even know how long that's been around, but
AllMusic is good for credits and stuff like that. Yes, that is true. But I'd like to see something actually associated with the file itself.
Yeah.
And right now you have to go through other databases in order to get that information.
yeah.
It's not actually attached to the file in any way, shape, or form. And I remember when I was a kid, half the fun was reading. When I was buying vinyl, especially, half the fun was reading all of the information that came on the back of your vinyl.
Yeah.
You know? Reading the
I
stories.
got to send
and
you one of
stuff.
my records.
Yeah, do that, definitely. So those are the two things that I'd like to see kind of change. I'd definitely like to see a higher definition format kind of settle down and be universally embraced by Spotify, Pandora,
Yeah.
Apple Radio, everybody.
But again, the more that doesn't happen, it's just going to change the music and the way people see it, and the way they approach it.
And the way they
You know
listen
what
to
I
it,
mean?
too.
The way they listen to it.
Yeah.
It's just so disposable. I wasn't even thinking of that when I did my record, but I just wanted to steer clear of it entirely, which is why I just put it on vinyl. And I don't want to play this game.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I was just talking to a friend of mine who does vinyl mastering. No, he's a cutting engineer, a lacquer cutting engineer. And it's like right now, the manufacturing facilities for vinyl are overwhelmed.
Slammed, yeah.
They're overwhelmed. They are unable to keep up with the demand at this point.
Yeah. I think I waited 16 weeks or something.
That is not an unusual wait at all.
Yeah.
You know, and, they're trying to of course, accommodate their larger runs and stuff like that, so 16-week wait on even a run of maybe 5,000 or 10,000 units is pretty standard, pretty normal.
I'd still like to figure out how to do it the other way now. Instead of paying the money to have a big studio and be an A-list mastering engineer, how to do it cheap and fast is what I'd like to try now.
Certainly in the production end of it, cheap and fast is getting easier and easier, but mastering a record is a real talent, and it takes a long time to get good
Absolutely.
at it. Also, the equipment is extraordinarily specialized and expensive, although I am starting to see more and more of these home lacquer cutter things can come out.
Really?
I have a link someplace on my bookmarks here about a German company that's doing
and there's always a place for that.
yeah, but
There
all the
will always be.
all the cutting engineers I know will say, yeah, I can probably teach you how to cut a lacquer in about a day and a half, But getting good at cutting a lacquer, that takes a great deal of time.
Yeah.
And
I
also-
don't know. They put mine through a Fairchild and they did some.
Yeah, well, there's because this is a physical process and because there's a limited amount of real estate on a lacquer disc, there is a bit of math that goes into figuring out what is called lines per inch and the amount of program that you have. I mean, there is an equation, a formula that goes into doing that. And setting that up wrong can be catastrophic for your lathe. It's very easy to set up a lathe wrong and end up blowing a cutting head that needs to go back to Germany and be basically refitted for roughly 10 grand.
Yeah.
So one knob can
Yeah.
basically make that happen for you.
Right. It's great that exists now, that because the life was sucked out of things on the other end with digital distribution, the other worlds have opened up.
Yeah, or come back. You know, I just find it super interesting that lacquer is starting to like rebound as heavily as it is.
The guy I talked to on Saturday does all cassettes. He owns a cassette label, which is a thing now too. They just do cassettes.
I'm working on a
great.
rock project, actually, that'll probably be somewhat cassette-oriented. I know that the guy wants to do a big run of cassettes, and I was like, I don't even know who does that. I mean, I think Mr. Toads does that here in San Francisco still. But I don't know. I'll have to find out. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks for
It was
inviting
good
me.
chatting with you.
Yeah, definitely, man. I had a
right.
good time.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
You've been listening to the Cameron Adair podcast made by me, Cameron Adair. Thanks to Matt Kelley. His website is mattkelleyaudio.com. mattkelleyaudio.com. This show is on iTunes. It's on my website. Thanks for listening.